Good morning, and good morning. I'm in the wrong time zone, the wrong, all of those things. I've been back long enough to get it correct. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock Eastern. YouTube, Facebook Live, Dialogue with Dozell comes to your airways every Monday night. Been doing this for about 3 years. How about you? How everybody getting along? So glad that you've designated tonight to join us. And for those of you who are going to be seeing us later, share it out and share it and subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our Facebook channel, and just make the dialogue a part of your constant existence. We do this every Monday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Tonight, we're going to be talking sports. We're going to talk a little NFL, and we're going to mainly concentrate on college football. We're going to look at some of this stuff, but before we get started, we have a somber dedication of tonight's show. Tonight's show is dedicated to the loving memory of Mrs. Rosalind Carter. Mrs. Carter is the widow. She is the wife of former President Jimmy Carter, James Earl Carter, and sometimes in life we think that we're one place and we're doing one thing, and certainly we enjoyed the Carters as our president from 1976 to 1980, and we thought we could have gotten a second term out of him, but unfortunately that red wave of the Reagan Revolution came in and deleted him. But God took them and made them excellent humanitarians. They show what living life on this planet is about. It's not about power of a presidency. It's not about the power of millions of people and being the most powerful person on the planet, but it's about the service that you commit to humanity. The Carters became embassies. They became humanitarians across the globe, overseeing elections and other nations, overseeing humanitarian efforts. They were widely respected across the spectrum of many countries that were democracies, some countries that weren't democracies, because of their humanitarian. And probably their greatest legacy is they put Habitat for Humanity on the national spotlight. Is President Carter and Mrs. Carter really dedicated themselves to that project, making sure that people could have affordable homes who couldn't otherwise. And so until recently, the last 2 years, basically, until dementia got the very best, started getting the best of her, and President Carter was unable to move around, they were very active in humanitarian causes. So tonight, the dialogue dedicates tonight's episode to the loving memory of Mrs. Rosalind Carter, who will be funeralized on Wednesday. We salute Mrs. Carter, and we're grateful that President Carter is still with us. All right. We are now we're at the wind down session of the football season. It's the end of the fall. By the way, hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, family. Kurt, what's up, man? Hoping everybody had a great Thanksgiving season with everybody, with family. We were blessed to have 2 of our 3 children and their families with us, and the third one, Madam Producer. We do things almost every day throughout the week with the projects that we do together. So we've been virtual and able to see each other and talk to each other. So we're just grateful for the institution of family and all of those things. And we just pray everybody had safe travels and an enjoyable season of the Thanksgiving season. Tonight, my guest, he's been here before, a dear brother, epitome of a fine young man that I think many people, young men can look up to, young ladies can look up to. And it's the person of Coach Otis Ragin. Coach, how you doing, sir?
Hey, how you doing, Coach Dozell, Varner? I'm doing fine. Everything is good, live and well.
Well, you know what's funny? You know, you were. I was thinking about this as I was prepping for the night show. You think you know someone. Fern, how are you? So glad to see you. Mm. Fern was one of our first regular guests of the show when we kicked off in front of a Facebook Live camera 3 years ago, and she hibernates up to Hawassi, Georgia, I think it is. But now she increases the months throughout the year, and just glad to see you back tonight on the dialogue. We took a beating the other night. We are all three Gator fans, so forgive me for being a chicken. I wore my UCF, my alma mater tonight. If we had gotten past FSU, I'd have been adoring with Gator stuff. Um, Tonight we're going to talk football, but I started saying you work with people, and Coach Ragin and I have been doing this for like 16, 17 years. And before I started working with him at Plantation High School, he coached my son. He coached the person who loans his name to this show. He coached Dozell and over at Plantation and spoke glowingly of him, and everything that he said manifested itself. I saw it fleshed out through the years. But I thought about this. And Coach, I'm always teasing you about Ryan Clark. Oh, that's not your favorite thing. But I see him and I look at him every day. I think about you. And I did not know until you came on the show the last time that you made, we call it a sacrifice. I'll say you made a grown man's decision. You had the opportunity to go and compete for the league or give it a trial or whatever, and you decided to come back home and be the father that you were.
Right.
And man, my hat's off to you. We salute you here for that
Thank
decision.
you.
You pulled in and contributed. I saw I saw Jay Flowers last night, and I know that you personally mentored that all of those Flowers fellas in elementary school, and I knew the other two young men, but I didn't know Jay. And every time I saw him last night, I thought about you as the Ravens, the Chargers. Let's
Yeah.
get right into the heart of the show tonight. We're here to talk fall sports, mainly football, and we're going to center in on we're going to center in on. We got some. Is that background? Can we do something about that noise, Madam Producer? Okay, all right. We're going to center in on um, college football later. But but right now we want to talk a little NFL. We want to talk a little NFL. And Coach, I want to ask you, what's your impressions of the teams as we get ready for the playoff run? What teams do you see surfacing to the top, and what teams do you see that can possibly be contenders and who are pretenders?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for that wonderful dialogue and praise that you gave me. But I appreciate it. I take that very seriously, and I appreciate it. But getting into the NFL, I think the NFC is very top heavy. I think that the AFC is pretty comparable, and there's a lot of parity. Over in the AFC, I think uh, Jacksonville and also KC for the same reasons. Although Jacksonville is a bit younger and inexperienced, I really think Jacksonville is a much more formidable opponent than KC, but I think KC is right there. And on the NFC side, you have at least three with Philly, San Francisco, and Dallas. Dallas has a defense that shows up. The offense is a little skittish, but overall, I think the best team is San Francisco 49ers, hands down. If they're healthy. If they're healthy, I think they're hands down the best team.
So, Coach, I'm kind of stuck on the AFC right now. You call it one team. I think they come from the county of Duval, Jacksonville. I am. I won't be a hypocrite. My brother's watching. Both of my brothers are diehard Jag fans, and I am too. But
Okay.
I kind of like about four teams. My favorite team will always be the Steelers. Then I'm a Jag. I like the Dolphins. I'm a homer. I've always been a homer. And I got my eyes on the Cowboys. But I love them Chiefs because you know I'm an offensive guy, and they do it as good as anybody has. Anywhere Andy
Right.
Reid showed up, offense has been of a premium. Um, but I'm really interested. I'm really excited to hear you say Jacksonville and not the Ravens. I'm really almost a little shocked to hear you say that Jacksonville and
Well,
Ravens as a you know possibly the contender to Kansas City.
well, the reason I say that is because Jacksonville can run the ball. And also, as long as Sunshine is playing the way he's playing, I think he's going to do fine. With Lamar, he's sporadic. I'm a fan of him, wish him well, but I'm not convinced on he nor Jalen Hurts leading a team to the Super Bowl. I think that they are great athletes, but you have to be able to distribute the ball. You have to be able to fit that ball in tight windows. It's not just about throwing it downfield 80 yards or being able to scramble unless you're going to be able to do that for 3 touchdowns a game. I just feel like Sunshine is going to lean on the team rather than himself. He's going to be able to make those throws.
You might need
Now,
might need to tell them who Sunshine is. I don't think.
Trevor Lawrence. Trevor
Yeah.
Lawrence. I mean, he the kid has been playing magnificent. And the other thing is, like I say, he pushes the ball downfield. It's not a system where you have to throw bubble screen here, uh, stalk screen to allow your athletes to open it up, similar to what Kansas City does, which is a system. I really think Trevor Lawrence owns that offense, and he has a young, fiery, tenacious defense that is going to support him. You also have tough nails coach and Peterson that has been there. And he knows that that division that he came from, the NFC East, it was a tough division. So he's used to playing those drag 'em out, rock 'em, sock 'em games. So I've been very impressed with Jacksonville, even though I haven't watched them week in and week out. Whenever I do watch them, they always seem to rise to the occasion.
Now, Coach, I'm always impressed to hear that my home team is, you know, a favorite from a great football mind, particularly defensive mind like yours. I know you are like the anti-Dolphin,
Yeah.
I didn't hear their name at all in the conversation over here in the AFC.
Well, I do think the Dolphins is one of the best teams in there, but they haven't beaten a team all year with a winning record, or if they have, it's only been one. When they did match up with stiff competition, um, they just didn't get over the hump, and they didn't get over the hump, and it didn't look well. It didn't look good. They are the epitome, in my opinion, of a gadget offense. A lot of smoke and mirrors, got to have a lot of motion. You got to have a lot of guys moving, a lot of trickery. And when you get to the point where I can get 2 weeks or I can get the entire season of film to study you, which they do in the playoffs, that could be a problem. I just know for myself when I have the more film I have, I can pick up on tendencies. And a lot of the things that they do, I know they say you shouldn't be stealing signals, but I don't believe in that. I mean, if you're showing your signals and I can figure them out, you need to get better signals. So,
I'm with you. I think I agree with you on that. And I agree with you about the assessment of the Dolphins. Until we were man being in Europe those 3 weeks and not being able to see American TV was a killer, especially knowing just miles from Kansas, where Kansas City and Miami was playing, and couldn't see the game nowhere.
right,
I've gone on a tour with two brothers, ironically from Jacksonville. They're going over. They're Kansas City fans. They're from Kansas City. We got stationed in Jacksonville, and
right.
two people went over there to see the game, and they joined us on a tour over in Rome. And that was the first assessment of the game itself that I'd actually heard. I just couldn't even pick up anything. It was hard. You can't imagine it was torture for those 3 weeks. But anyway, I agree with you. And as we transcend, I mean, as we transition over to the NFC, I think the same assessment of the Dolphins, because the Dolphins were beaten handily by the
49ers.
yeah, and it was kind of like they were exposed to me as a finesse team against a physical
Right,
team, and those
right.
teams win. I almost had the same assessment of the Cowboys. Tell me I'm wrong about that.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. You know, they've changed coordinators, offensive coordinators. They've changed a plethora of things. But the real thing seems to be just plain and simple execution. Execution. And I've been a Dak fan or rooting for Dak to succeed ever since he stepped into the league. And it becomes kind of trite. It becomes kind of trite when the guy produces the same thing every year, year in and year out. I'm not against him, but it's like, what have you done for me lately? He hasn't done anything. So, and my Seahawks play him this Thursday. I hope he continues to play like he's playing.
Well, that's gonna be a good game and a good test. We certainly had to deal with Geno Smith for 3 years here at Miramar
Yeah.
High School, and the kid showed he was such a phenomenal high school player that I'm glad to see the success, even though it's
Yes.
it's not 5 star, but I'm glad to see his career resurrected there at Seattle, and I think that's going to be a good test for both of those teams because it's going to be it's not top tier competition for the Cowboys, but it's certainly not the losing
Hmm.
that they have been facing, and they
Right.
too have been beaten. I missed them when they played Philadelphia the last time. We missed that game being abroad, but I was told that they were at least in that game, looked good, and had an opportunity to come back and make it competitive at the end. So that's a pretty physical defense, pretty physical team. So I think Thursday night will be a good indication to see where the Cowboys are going to be. I would like to see the Cowboys because since Dak got his contract, I kind of pulled for him. I would like this, but they'd have to show me that they can compete with the big boys in Philly.
Right. They for real. Yeah.
Francisco. Now, you said San Francisco is the real deal, and I think we are going to see that because both teams are relatively healthy coming up this week when San Francisco plays Philadelphia. Um, I love Purdy as a quarterback. I know you call him a system quarterback, but I love how he functions in that system. But I have to disagree with you about Hurts. Man, that kid, he is the modern day Brady. He's more gifted, I think, than Brady. And he finds a way to win. That's what I like about him. He finds a way to win. He's a runner. He's hurt, so he didn't run, but he picked his spots to run yesterday, and he ran right into the end zone for the winning touchdown. So they came up within a hair being the Super Bowl champions. So I can't say, and he would have undoubtedly been the MVP of that game. He scored 2 touchdowns, threw 3. So I Hurts is he's proven to me. I don't know what you say. Not he wouldn't be
Hey,
the
hey.
Super
I mean, I wish him all well. I don't know him, but just looking at his body language, that stoic look that he gives when things aren't going well, and he just has no facial expression, doesn't look like he's enjoying the game. Um, I tell you, being a defensive guy, it would really be hard for me to play with him. It would really be hard for me to play on the same team with him. And he is a quarterback, so they probably would send me packing, which would be fine. But I just need to see a little bit of more emotion. That's opinion based. But talking skill set, just skill set. Um, Even when he was at Alabama, I did not think he was the second coming of any of the quarterbacks or players that came before him. I mean, if he was as good as he was advertised, he never would have lost his position to Tool. And Might add, Tua is playing pretty well himself, as you alluded to with the Dolphins. Um, so, I mean, I think Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He's a good quarterback. Any team will be lucky to have him, including Seattle. I just don't think that he's he is in a position. I don't think he carries the team. I don't think. I think there's still room for growth. Once he tap into that, I agree. They won't be able to touch him. But I just don't think he it is something about him, the moxie, the gumption. He just does not possess um, that killer instinct. He's real passive and laid back. And when you're talking about a brutal and violent sport in which we all played at a high level, when you're leading men, you need that. You need that. I feel like the defense is carrying that team.
Now let me kind of somewhat let's engage that because what is it? Was it Miko Ryan? Was it Miko, the coach of the Texans, the Houston Texans? His name Miko Ryan, the brother.
D'Amico.
D'Amico. Okay. So today on Undisputed, Skip Bayless, when you retire, you watch all the sports shows all day long. Skip Bayless alluded to the fact that he's the right demeanor for that team because it's a young team and he's calm, he's collected. And I was looking at Jalen Hurts yesterday, just what you were saying, but it was really pronounced to me yesterday. He's on the sideline. There was no expression. There was no cool. He was just there. But buddy, when he hit that field, he made things happen. So I just don't know if that's if that's
Are you speaking of that last touchdown where the safety should have made the tackle instead of trying to punch the ball out, coach?
well,
So if he
no,
made that happen, it was a bad call by the defense. You had zero backers in the box.
yeah.
You did an all-out A-gap blitz, and all he did was hit the B gap. So it was something that I didn't look at as that big of a deal. I looked at more of coaching calls that because you didn't pressure him the entire time. He drove down there, and you pressure him on the 20-yard line, 15-yard line, and a zero-man blitz, which means no safeties, no backers, anything.
Yeah.
I mean, so he just picked the lane and he just ran. And he looked very pedestrian when he was running, I might add. He
I think
did score.
he knew there was nobody there, and so he had no sense of urgency.
Maybe you could be right. I just feel like the safety should have made the tackle instead of trying to go for the home run and punch the ball out. I mean, the NFL is just it's laughable at times.
He
You
drove.
know,
I'm basing my comments on the fact that he brought him back. What 4 straight games that they were down 10 points or more at halftime. He brought him back against Kansas City. He brought him back, and on that last drive when he had to get at least a field goal, he got a couple of key third downs in that game-winning drive. And I wasn't pulling for that. I was really pulling for Buffalo. I was pulling for Buffalo, so I'm not his fan. I'm not saying this as a fan. I'm just kind of as an objective. I had interest.
Right.
Yeah,
So he brought him back. I mean, Buffalo. I guess you could say he brought him back, but that defense stopped Buffalo as well. The defense stopped Buffalo in order to give him that opportunity. So a lot of credit goes to the quarterback, and I don't think enough blame goes to the quarterback. I think everything goes. Hey, when they win, it's the quarterback. When they lose, everybody, hey, the O line is not playing well. Hey, the defense isn't tackling. It's just not. It's biased. It's totally biased. But I'm a defensive guy, so.
I was just going to say, Dozell, you have the consummate objective, the consummate perspectives of a defensive guy and an offensive guy.
Yeah, and Brady said it well on Twitter last week. It's not my responsibility to keep you healthy, but they keep making rules
Yeah.
to score more points. And this is really 7-on-7 now. I mean, I can play receiver in the NFL now. I can go across the middle. I mean, you
Yeah, and
can't hit them.
we're gonna have to. You know what? If you'll be gracious to come back as we get ready for the NFL playoffs, maybe we can come back and just devote a host, because we want to talk about some of these rules and the big
Yeah.
controversy as a drag down tackle and drop tackle as they call it. So let's transition, if we would, to well, let me ask you this. So you're saying basically it's Kansas City and San Francisco in both conferences right now?
No way. I didn't mention Kansas City.
Oh, you did?
I don't think Kansas City. I like Jacksonville, and as you alluded to, I like Baltimore. I am not honestly. I'm not afraid if someone what you see with Baltimore. Baltimore's DBs and their D line can pressure Mahomes, and they can tackle and cover, which is the same thing you see with the Dolphins. When you see the Dolphins played San Francisco and Philly, Darius Slade, those guys were prepared and able to press Tyreek. So once you do those type of things, those pick plays are not as effective. You have to be able to play press coverage, not just man coverage. You have to be able to play press. And what you'll see if you press him and you blitz him, that quarterback is going to have to run. And when he runs, you hit him. So I think that Baltimore can do those things to affect Mahomes more so than Kansas City can do things to affect the other two quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence and Lamar.
Well, we'll get to see that after a while, because if in fact ended up as they are, Kansas City would be going to Baltimore. Mahomes is first playoff game outside of Kansas City, outside of Arrowhead,
which would be great,
man. Yeah, go Cowboys. I wanted the Bills too. Yeah, I was pulling for them for Cowboy reasons. Mac is a friend of our family, and he's a dedicated Cowboy fan. Coach. We are going to we're going to transition to college football right after the break. Let's do it like that, because there were a few questions before we get into the playoff picture. Let's go to the break. You're not using Go Giga World for your digital needs, you are missing out on being at the optimum of your game. GoGigaWorld.com. Contact them for all of your digital or web building concerns. I promise you, if they can make this fella look presentable, they can make you look good. So we are, it's been a minute. My brother, my co-pilot on the show has told me that our halftime segments need to, as much as possible, align with the show. So because of that, tonight, Governor Despicable and Orange Hitler, you're getting a reprieve. But we are going to do a Are You Serious? Wow, it's been a minute. Auburn University, War Eagles, Tigers, whatever you are you serious? As Warner Wolf would say, let's go to the videotape. Let it explain the situation better.
That's all it is. But there's a lot of airspace to cover for Milroe. Still looking. Firing. Near corner. It's caught! Touchdown, Alabama! Isaiah Bond! On a 4th and a mile!
4th and a mile. All Auburn had to do was keep them out of the end zone. That's all they had to do, and they would have cleared this playoff program that we're about to this playoff situation we're about to discuss. That would have been cleared up. There would have been lesser possibility of 2 4-1, 2 1-loss teams being in the Final Four. But you let them off the hook like that, Auburn. Are you serious? I really meant to get the dimensions of the end zones in the NFL, the depth, the width, and all of that, because you actually had ridiculously 9 men. All they had to do was cover whatever those square footage was in the end zone, and that's all you had to do. And you couldn't do it. On the last play of the game that would have given you the upset of the year, Auburn, are you serious? Wow. You rushed 2. You gave him all day. He had time to go back there, eat lunch, shave, do everything he had to do. That means that because only 2 were there, all you had to do was line up people across the end zone and make sure nobody was by themselves. He actually was by himself before he caught the ball. And then he was single covered. Both on the outside of the end zone, you left those guys single covered. You covered everybody else double and triple covered. Are you serious? What kind of coverage was that? Auburn, you put the despised Bama into playoff contention. If they pull off an upset, they're going to have a great contention that they should be in the Final Four. Auburn, the same Auburn team that beat them about 10 years ago with that return field goal, you had an opportunity to send them home brokenhearted, and you let them off the hook. Auburn, are you serious? Okay, back to the dialogue before I get too excited. Joining me tonight is my good friend, Coach Otis Ragin. Coach, let me just clean this up about NFL before we transition. One other thing, what coaches do you see on the hot seat? Coach Frank Wright of the Carolina Panthers was dismissed today. Who do you see on the hot seat? What other coaches?
Well, you know that is strange that you asked that. As much as I like him, I hope Pete Carroll is on the hot seat.
Wow.
You know, along with the general manager. That's one I would say. Mike Tomlin seems to be doing a much better job than I thought he was going to end up doing. So I did think he was going to be on the hot seat, you know, the way the season began. But definitely Arizona. I think Arizona. I think, like I said, Seattle. Those are like my top 2. Arizona, Seattle. I mean, it just seems like they just need new leadership. It's time to blow both of those teams up and just start from scratch.
I get you with both of those teams, but you know, Arizona's coach was just put in place this year.
Yeah, so was Wright. So was Frank Wright. You know, so hey, look, sometimes you just got to blow it up. It's time.
And I think, and I know you're a beloved Seahawks fan, and I've always had a love and affection for the Seahawks. But I think you might be right to really make that team competitive. You kind of patched it up last year by bringing Geno in to replace. But I think you could be right. A blow up and a restart, a reboot might be what does it. And that's pretty drastic. Talking about replacing Pete Carroll, though. That's
Rivera, same thing in Washington. You know, it's just time to get some new ideas.
If Rivera goes, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I hear you.
If Rivera goes, do you think there's any chance that being earn an opportunity to get that team as pitiful as that offense has looked from time?
I mean, honestly, I would look at. Listen, you did. It seemed that he had all of his success under Reed. Reed is still being productive without him, but how productive is he without Reed? I do think, however, Bieniemy is a great coach, and I think he deserves to be or get a shot at as a head coach. But I don't think it needs to be in Washington. I mean, I don't think that the city would embrace it. I think he needs to go like he attempted to do, go on his own. But if they got another year, I think he really needs to be at the top of the league, to salvage his name. I think this really besmirched him a bit,
Yeah.
So, I think he really needs to, now he needs to get back in the lab. I think it knocked him down a few pegs. And I
Okay.
don't think the city really want to see him anymore, even though he's a good coach. I wouldn't.
And Max making an interesting point that his quarterback is the NFL leader in passing. That's one bright spot amongst nothing, because they've really not produced on either side of the ball.
Either side, yeah.
But it's interesting that you didn't. Two names, and Mac mentioned Belichick. I was going to get to that, but I think the greatest. I'm with Stephen A. Smith. This guy should have been gone. I hated that they made the change last year and brought him in. I want to say the San Diego, but the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that's too talented of a ball team. Boza, who we coach against, that defense can be more productive, and they got a great young quarterback. I think they need to make that change. And Belichick is a question mark, I would think, at this point.
Well, the thing with Belichick is, I think it's pretty much the same thing with Seattle. I think Belichick and Pete Carroll has earned at least one more year because they've kind of sort of drafted well. Both of them have drafted well. So the cupboards were empty. The cupboards were empty when they went through that transition. They gave up their star quarterbacks for draft picks. So for them to give up the highly paid star quarterbacks for draft picks, I would think that front office and the head coach is on the same page. Okay, we're going to give you 2 or 3 years to rebuild this, and then, we should be back in contention. But while we're rebuilding, we don't want to go to the bottom. We want to keep butts in the seat. Now, with the Chargers, I hasten to see all of the talent that everyone is talking about. Khalil Mack is old. He's still effective because he's leading. He's like second in the lead with tackles. Bosa is never available, since he's been drafted. They do have a plethora of receivers, and then you have Eckford or whatever, but I don't see all of the talent that I think they're a good team, and I think they're underachieving. I think they are poorly served by this coach, but I don't see them in the upper echelon of the AFC team. Even the Dolphins have more talent than San Diego.
Matt makes the point that that Belichick wants to stick around to have a shot, and I think that's what Robert Kraft is giving him the opportunity to pass Shula as a coach of the. He certainly earned it as a coach of the Patriots, but I don't think he's gonna get too many more years. I think if this season is putrid,
right,
as this is, I think they're gonna give him about a hearty goodbye. I think they'll make get off him a position.
Yeah, they'll come to an agreement. Yeah.
Let him transition to another team.
Right.
I wanted to, but right before we talked about, and that was the crux of the night show, before we got into the college football playoffs, I wanted to ask you about the HBCU Bowl. It's going to be FAMU versus, first FAMU has to win the SWAC, right? They have to play.
Yeah, SWAC championship.
Yes, they're playing
Prairie
View for the SWAC championship. Okay. And then the winner of that game plays, is it Hampton or Howard?
Whoever wins the MEAC.
Yeah, I think
whoever won the MEAC.
Yeah, Dozell told me that day was determined. I think he said it was Howard. It already
Howard. Okay.
Yeah. So
it was Howard.
And what I wanted to ask you, because you're uniquely qualified, having played at HBCU ball, and I know your heart's there. You're a great HBCU alumni, as is Dozell. Both you guys, I like where you hold up your schools. He was explaining to me that it's more profitable to play in the Stag. Is that the Stag Bowl where they play? They call it HBCU champion, as opposed to going into the playoff system, where FAMU won the national championship about 30-some years ago. He says it's more profitable for them to play in that Stag Bowl. I think that's the Stag Bowl, that championship, the MEAC champion against the SWAC champion. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't know if you all know, but most of the people in the SWAC were very irate and outraged by FAMU a year ago when they went to the playoffs, because MEAC and SWAC don't go to the playoffs. SWAC hasn't been to the playoffs in I don't know how long. So FAMU entered the SWAC last year where they can be competitive and not be on probation or anything, and they elected to go to the playoffs. That's something that was an agreement that the SWAC entered in, before me and probably before I was born. We don't go to the playoffs, and the reason was because no matter how high we are ranked at the HBCUs, and you can even see it in the 64 with basketball. In basketball, they make our teams play a consolation game.
Right.
And that's crazy to play a consolation game when you play the same amount of teams and play the conference and you've won your conference. Put me in the bracket. Don't make me play a consolation game. If that's the case, don't invite us. Yeah. And the same thing with the playoffs. What they seem to do is send, no matter how good you are, how good your record is, you never end up getting a high enough ranking to host playoff games.
Right.
So they end up sending us to North Dakota, sending us to Colorado, sending us to New Hampshire in the snow.
Yeah.
And we perform poorly. So they connect all that or put all that together to say, okay, well, you're playing against inferior competition, which is not true. So, home field advantage, playing in front of your home crowd and those things, until they can address those things that I think is done uniformly and fairly, I feel that HBCU shouldn't enter into that tournament. Now, it is more profitable because to go to a classic or go to a bowl game, because you're going to be paid to play there. When you go to the playoffs, your school has to pay for lodging, transportation, food, and any other thing. You have to bring your equipment up there. Most of those teams, I know when bowl game, most of those teams bring their weight room with them. So there's tons and tons of gobs and gobs of money that's involved in that. I know that's how it's done on the D1 1A scale. But for you to go to the playoffs and have to play in Slippery Rock or somewhere where you're not going to have an audience, you're not getting paid for it, you're actually helping the NCAA. So, no, I agree. Don't send our teams.
That's a real interesting point. I heard what he was saying in a brief explanation he was giving me the other day. But and we know the Stag Bowl is going to be like the Rose Bowl, the HBCU Rose Bowl, because everybody's going to descend there.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good point. The next time, maybe on the other side of as we get to championship week or so, we may revisit this. And I want to bring Albert Chester, who was a part of that FAMU team that won that last championship, see if he'll join us and talk about that perspective from the other side, because he basks in that glory. I follow him, and he basks in that glory. And I remember what a proud thing was for all of us here in the state of Florida that FAM had won the small college, so whatever they call it, Division II, a championship back there. But I think you guys' explanation makes a whole lot of sense. Now, before speaking of Colorado, before I have to sign off here, we transition. Last time we were together, you had some trepidation about Dion moving on to Colorado. He's gone. It's been a season. He won some games he was not supposed to win. They started out real hot. They've had this extended losing streak. 4-8 with their final. Shadua found out that he has a fractured bone in his back. That kid looked like, man, he looked like college versions of Tom Brady. If he just didn't have the protection. How do you feel about Colorado's season?
I mean, I'm not surprised. I actually predicted it. I know you and I talked about this before. And when I say I'm not surprised, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. I do have confidence that Dion will get it where it needs to be if they give him the time. But it goes back to what I say, once you get film on a person, film is so valuable. And I know they could have gotten film on his coordinators from the past, but it's something different when you can get uh, present day or relevant film. When I can sit there and watch film on you, I'm gonna be able to affect you, and that's what those coaches did. I think Dion won games that he won because clearly those were inferior teams. The Colorado State game could have gone either way, but the talent tilted the field with the big plays, which was good. I think in due time, Colorado will have players to be able to compete. I don't know that they're national. It'll be a national championship. I won't put it past them, but I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all with 3 wins. I'm not surprised at all that they couldn't protect the quarterback because most of the teams that are not doing well is not the skill guys, it's the bigs. So once you get the bigs that dominate, whether it's the offensive front or the defensive front, that makes everything easier.
Yeah.
You can I mean, going back to Seattle, we had Steve Hutchinson, we had Sean Locklear, we had Walter Jones. I mean, Sean Alexander gets most of the credit, but he was running behind perennial Hall of Famers. So when you have the bigs, it's important. It's important. But
during that stretch that Nebraska dominated college football or was always a strong contender, their lines, you could put my two broke up knees behind them and I could run behind that.
Correct.
Yeah. So just a hypothetical before we transition into the playoffs. If Dion is able to turn that thing around when we come back on, if you'll give me another outing right between the championship, the college championship and the NFL playoffs, we can come back on and further this discussion. I want to talk about NIL and the portal and those kinds of things. But hypothetically, if Dion, now we're both unabashed Gator fans, just so everybody knows that, Fern and Mac, I know you've been hitting us hard since Saturday night, but we're still unabashed Gator fans. Shame on me for not wearing my Gator attire tonight. Had they won, I'd be blue and orange up and down. But anyway, if Dion turns this thing around in the next 3 years and they're competitive, they're going to the Big 12, I think, where they should have every opportunity to be. If he has a couple of 10-2 seasons and top 10s and maybe got a shot at a couple major bowls, maybe consideration for the playoffs, he had to extend to 8 teams. How would you like to see him as the coach of our beloved Gator?
Man, I might upset some people here, but I'm gonna just speak my mind. I'm not a Dion fan. Never have been, never will be. But I will welcome him with open arms if he can show one thing. I'm not concerned with his coaching. Well,
Okay.
actually, two things. Show that he can recruit. And I mean high school kids. I don't mean going into the portal.
Yeah.
I don't mean going into the portal. That's pretty close to what Charlie Strong did, and all of that is not sustainable. You
Right.
have to raise your and develop kids. If
Agree
he
with
can
that.
show me he can do that, then I'm
Okay.
with Dion. And the other thing is not be so brash. You got to stop getting all of the publicity on him. It's about the kids. It's about the institution. And again, this is opinion based. I'm not one of those guys that have to be in front of the camera talking every day about the players and the program. And I mean, it's like Jerry Jones, which is why a lot of people loathe the Cowboys. It's because of Jerry Jones. And
Yeah.
that's probably why a lot of people bash him so much because, and he won't change. And I don't want him to change because that's him. I'm saying
Yeah.
those would be some of the points that would make me satisfied with it. Recruiting and get off the camera, man. Get off the camera like a cheerleader, man.
I was just about to say that. That's just Dion. That's just.
Yeah, I don't accept it. No.
I get it. All right. We got about 7 minutes. Mac is you hear me referring to him. He puts the funniest posts on Facebooks. The crying Michael Jordan. He'll make the crying Michael Jordan the loser of the presidential election. He'll make him the loser of the Florida State game. He's been hard on us. So I'm being sympathetic to your Cowboys. If the Cowboys lose some close games, Mac, I might have to come back and get you back, though. He just hard on us when we lose. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. I was so hoping that Alabama was just wiped out of the equation, but we're looking at now Georgia. Hopefully, there's no question about Florida State, Washington, Michigan, and Oregon hangs in the balance now, with the decision maybe being made in the Pac-12 championship on this week. Who do you like? Who do you like as the Final Four teams? I mean, I know it's got to play out next week, the championships, but who would you like to see the Final Four teams end up being?
I like three of the four you said. I don't like Florida State to go.
Wow.
I don't think they play a tough conference schedule. And at the same time, with that conference schedule,
they beat LSU and Clemson.
LSU ain't did nothing this year. They beat Florida. Florida ain't do nothing this year. So you can't. If I say you play LSU back when Jefferson and Chase was there and Burrow, yeah. But the teams, they go year to year. So just to say they beat an institution, that doesn't hold water. You beat an SEC school, okay? Well, Kentucky beat Louisville, or it just doesn't matter. It matters what you've done. They've had a lot of close calls.
But you could say they beat who was lined up in front of them. I'm watching that same.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do is say it. It don't hold water. Because if you're looking at the games, you had a close game with Boston College, who pretty much lost everything to the draft and seniors last year. They had a very close game with was it NC State? It was someone else early on in the season.
They won in overtime.
Right, and the quarterback was there. So as you can see, Florida was able to play with them for 3 quarters.
Yes. Without Bone mistakes, they could have even won that game.
Right, they could have. They could have. Without Bone, I believe it was coaching in my part. But with that, Florida was able to play with them. And Florida is terrible right now. They're terrible because the quarterback wasn't there. So he's not going to be there. I don't think Florida State beats any of those teams without that quarterback.
Who would be your four?
It'll be, of course, Bama. It'll be Georgia. I'm thinking Michigan. I'm going with Michigan.
So Your scenario calls for Georgia beating Bama. I mean, Bama beating Georgia, and then both of them being in the top two. I mean, being in the top
Well, in the national championship game, who do I think would be there?
in the top four of the
The
four that's
top four would be Michigan, Oregon, Georgia, Bama.
But I'm saying your scenario would calls for Bama to beat Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Correct.
Because if they lose
Correct.
that, I don't see them nowhere near it.
Correct. And that would be the only way I think Florida State gets in, which means Florida State has to beat Louisville, which I don't think they will. And I mean, no, I don't think they beat Louisville.
Louisville lost to Kentucky.
Correct. Right. I don't think Florida State beats Kentucky right now without Travis without their quarterback. I don't think they're any of the top teams Florida State beat them. That's just me.
Well,
I mean, they're gonna have to do a whole lot better. They're gonna have to run the ball. And I mean, it was just too many opportunities for Florida in that game, you know. And Florida, like I say, Florida's not very talented. I mean, the receiver's not very good. I mean,
well, now let me ask you this: you're making a way for Bama to be there, and Bama had close calls across the whole schedule. Auburn should have been away, but you're saying if they beat Georgia, I'm the biggest dog fan you ever seen come Saturday. I despise Bama, but anyway, that's another question. But on your scenario, how about Oregon just gets by Washington in the Pac-12 championship? Is there a case of both of them could make it?
there is a case because all of this is hypothetical. We're talking about what we think, who we think should be there. And so, of course, they could be there. But when you look at it, I even like Washington's chances as well. I just feel that and like you said, Alabama played close games all year. Alabama has looked better and better past 4, 5, 6 games every week. They've looked better. They've gotten better. And Florida State has gotten progressively worse because of one thing. Now, going back to the Pac-12 thing, I mean, they just got to play better defense. They don't play any defense over there, man. They'll score 45, 46 over there. I don't think you can trot into the playoffs expecting to score that many points or give up that many points or, and win. The defense is the question for me for those two teams.
Coach, let me ask you a question. The clock just beat me upside the head. Is it possible you and I can come back and revisit this whole thing and look more into the NFL playoffs between those two?
Yeah.
Yes, Coach. Y'all, that's my good buddy, and I hope we still remain coaching pals. We'll talk about that. Coach, thank you so much. Any final questions or comments?
No, Coach, man, I had a ball, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you kindly. We always have one when you're here. Thank you kindly. Okay.
All right.
As I see it, college football has done everything to try to make this to make a real champion. 4 teams we got from them matching the BCS, the top 2 teams. We got a playoff with 4 teams, and now we're getting ready to go to an 18 playoff. And with the way things have lined up with some pretty solid 1-loss teams, and there'll be a couple more after Saturday's games, I think next year we'll have a real opportunity. I don't know how the format's going to be, but I think it's going to be a better opportunity to see a true champion in college football. That's how I see it. Man, sports is such an entertaining thing to get our mind to deal with the world problems. I had to get away from the war, from the hostage situation. We thank God for sports and the opportunities it offers our young men and the opportunity it offers for families to make it in this life. Dialogue with Dozell. We'll see you next Monday night, 8 p.m., YouTube, Facebook. We're out. Thank you, Coachy.